The countdown clock flashed in bright red numbers, towering above the city square like a silent judge. 10 seconds. The air vibrated with excitement. Music echoed off glass buildings. Fireworks sat loaded on rooftops, waiting for permission to explode into color. Couples wrapped their arms around each other. Friends shouted over the noise, laughing, cheering, counting down together. Hundreds of phones were lifted into the air, capturing the final breaths of a year. This was supposed to be a moment of joy. But the far edge of the celebration, just outside the brightest lights, stood one black man, completely alone. His name was Caleb Brooks. He wasn't dressed like the others. No tailored suit, no designer coat, no VIP badge hanging from his neck. Just a clean, dark coat that had seen better days, worn shoes, and a small black box held carefully in both hands. He didn't move. He didn't smile. He didn't look nervous either. People noticed him, not because he was loud, not because he caused trouble, but because, to them, he didn't fit the picture. A group nearby leaned toward each other, smirking. "Why would he even come here?" one man muttered. Another voice followed, lower but sharper. "Probably looking for free food or handouts." Soft laughter broke out. Caleb heard every word. He felt the stares pressing into his back, the sideways glances, the quick judgments made without a single question asked. He had known this feeling his entire life, the feeling of being measured, dismissed, and labeled before he ever spoke. But he didn't react. He didn't turn around. He didn't defend himself. Instead, Caleb slowly lifted his eyes to the massive digital clock above the stage. The numbers changed again. 9, 8. The glow of the screen reflected in his calm, steady eyes. Inside the black box, something shifted slightly as he adjusted his grip. Whatever it held, it mattered to him. Deeply, Caleb took a slow breath. Around him, the city buzzed with noise and celebration. Inside him, there was only patience. As the final seconds of the year slipped away, no one in that crowd could have imagined the truth. Because in just moments, when the clock hit 0, everything they thought they knew about the man standing alone was about to shatter, and the new year would begin, with a lesson no one expected. As the crowd surged closer to the main stage, bodies pressing shoulder to shoulder, a uniformed security guard suddenly stepped in front of Caleb, blocking his path. "Sir," the guard said loudly, his voice sharp enough to cut through the music, "this area is restricted." The words weren't just instructions. They were a challenge. Caleb stopped. He looked at the guard. Not with anger, not with fear, but with calm certainty. "I'm supposed to be here," Caleb replied evenly. The guard glanced at him from head to toe. The worn shoes, the simple coat, the small black box in his hands. Then he laughed. A short, mocking laugh. "Yeah," the guard said, "and I'm the mayor." A ripple of amusement spread through the people nearby. Heads turned. Someone nudged their friend and pointed. Another person lifted a phone, the camera lens locking onto Caleb's face. A woman scoffed. "Just move him already." The words hit harder than the guard's laughter. Caleb felt it instantly, the heat of dozens of eyes burning into him. Not curiosity, not concern, judgment. The kind that arrives before questions are asked. The kind that decides your value in seconds. He had felt it before. In classrooms where teachers assumed he wouldn't keep up. In stores where clerks followed him down every aisle. In meetings where his ideas were ignored until someone else repeated them. That same look was here now. The look that said, "You don't belong." Caleb shifted his weight slightly, but didn't step back. "I'll stand right here," he said quietly. The guard rolled his eyes dramatically. "Suit yourself," he muttered. "Just don't cause trouble." The crowd laughed again. Not loudly, just enough to sting. The digital clock above the stage flickered. 30 seconds. Music pulsed louder. The crowd began chanting numbers. The mayor was getting ready to speak. Fireworks crackled softly in the distance. Waiting, Caleb tightened his grip on the small black box. Inside it was something he had carried with him all night. Something he had thought about for weeks. Something heavier than it looked. He took a slow, controlled breath. The guard leaned closer, lowering his voice but not his attitude. "Listen," he said, "you don't want to make a scene tonight. It's New Year's Eve. People are here to celebrate. Caleb met his eyes. So am I, he replied. That response confused the guard. He hesitated, then scoffed again and turned away slightly, clearly dismissing Caleb as unimportant. Behind them, whispers grew louder. Who does he think he is? He's holding up the crowd. Always got to be someone causing drama. Each word stacked on Caleb's chest like invisible weight. But he stood still. He didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't explain himself. He simply waited. The clock flashed again. 20 seconds. The mayor stepped onto the stage, adjusting the microphone. The music faded. The crowd slowly quieted, anticipation building. Caleb could feel his heart beating now, not from fear but from timing. Everything depended on the next few moments. The guard straightened his posture, suddenly attentive now that the mayor was visible. He glanced back at Caleb one last time, irritation still etched on his face. "Don't move," he whispered sternly. Caleb nodded. The mayor cleared his throat. "Ladies and gentlemen," the mayor began, his voice echoing through the square, "thank you for joining us tonight as we welcome a brand new year." Cheers erupted. Caleb remained still. The mayor continued. "Before we begin the countdown, there's something important I need to say." The crowd settled. Phone steadied. Caleb felt the air change. "This city," the mayor said, "has seen challenges this year. Schools in need, hospitals under pressure, families struggling." Murmurs spread through the crowd. "But tonight," the mayor went on, "we stand here because someone believed in this city enough to change its future." Caleb exhaled slowly. The guard frowned. The mayor paused, then looked out over the crowd. "And that person," he said, "is standing right here with us tonight." The guard stiffened. The mayor's gaze moved deliberately, past the bright lights, past the VIP section, until it landed on Caleb. "Mr. Caleb Brooks," the mayor said clearly, "would you please join me on stage?" For a split second, no one reacted. Then the crowd went silent. The guard's face drained of color. Phones dropped slightly. Whispers stopped mid-sentence. Caleb lifted his head. The small black box felt lighter now. As the clock above them ticked down the final seconds, Caleb took one step forward, then another. And in that moment, before midnight even arrived, the crowd realized something powerful. The man they laughed at, the man they dismissed, the man they tried to move aside, had been exactly where he was supposed to be all along. As the crowd pushed closer to the main stage, bodies pressing shoulder to shoulder, a uniformed security guard stepped directly into Caleb's path, forcing him to stop. "Sir," the guard said loudly, his voice firm and unapologetic, "this area is restricted." The words carried more than authority. They carried judgment. Caleb looked at him calmly. No panic, no anger. "I'm supposed to be here," Caleb said. The guard scanned him slowly, from his worn shoes to the simple dark coat, to the small black box resting in his hands. Then he laughed, a short, dismissive laugh. "Yeah," the guard said, "and I'm the mayor." A few people nearby chuckled. Heads turned. Conversations paused. Someone nudged a friend and whispered something while pointing. Another person raised a phone, already recording. A woman scoffed loudly. "Just move him already." Caleb felt it immediately, the weight of attention pressing down on him. Not curiosity, not concern, judgment, the kind that forms in seconds, the kind that decides who matters and who doesn't. He had felt it before, in schools where teachers expected less from him, in stores where security followed him without reason, in meetings where his words were ignored until someone else repeated them. That same look was here now, the look that said, "You don't belong." Caleb swallowed, steadying himself. "I'll stand right here," he said quietly. The guard rolled his eyes. "Suit yourself," he muttered. "Just don't cause trouble." Soft laughter rippled through the crowd. The digital countdown clock above the stage flickered. 30 seconds. Music pulsed louder. People began to cheer again, trying to pull their attention back to the celebration. But the tension lingered. Caleb tightened his grip on the small black box. His fingers pressed into its edges, grounding him. Inside was something important, something he had carried all night with care and intention. He took a slow breath. The guard leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Listen," he said, You don't want to ruin your night. People are here to celebrate. Caleb met his eyes. So am I, he replied. The guard frowned, unsure how to respond, then turned away dismissively. Behind them, whispers continued. Who does he think he is? He's holding people up. Always someone causing a scene. Caleb heard every word, but he didn't move. The clock flashed again. 20 seconds. The mayor stepped onto the stage, adjusting the microphone. The music faded. The crowd slowly quieted, anticipation building as people raised their phones higher. Fireworks crackled faintly in the distance. Caleb's heart beat steadily now, not with fear, but with timing. Everything was unfolding exactly as it should. The guard straightened his posture, suddenly attentive now that the mayor was visible. He glanced back at Caleb once more, irritation still clear on his face. Stay put, he whispered sharply. Caleb nodded slightly. The mayor cleared his throat. Ladies and gentlemen, the mayor began, his voice echoing across the square. Thank you for being here tonight as we say goodbye to this year and welcome a new one. Cheers erupted. Caleb remained still. But before we begin the final countdown, the mayor continued, there's something important I need to say. The crowd hushed. This city has faced challenges, the mayor said. Schools in need, hospitals struggling, families uncertain about the future. Murmurs spread. But tonight, he continued, we are standing here because one person believed this city was worth saving. Caleb exhaled slowly. The guard's expression shifted, confusion creeping in. The mayor paused, scanning the crowd. And that person, he said clearly, is here with us right now. The guard stiffened. The mayor's eyes moved deliberately past the VIP section, past the brightest lights, until they landed on Caleb. Mr. Caleb Brooks, the mayor said, would you please come forward? The world seemed to freeze. Phones lowered. Whispers stopped. The guard's face drained of color. Caleb lifted his head. The small black box felt lighter now. As the clock ticked down the final seconds, Caleb took a step forward, then another. And in that moment, before midnight even arrived, the crowd realized the truth. The man they laughed at, the man they tried to move aside, the man they judged in seconds, had been exactly where he belonged all along. Caleb didn't smile. He didn't lift his arms. He didn't wave to the crowd or acknowledge the sudden attention. Instead, he slowly opened the small black box he had been carrying all night. Inside was a single envelope, plain, unmarked, and carefully sealed. He held it for a moment, then stepped forward and placed it gently into the mayor's hands. The mayor looked down, surprised by its simplicity. He opened it, unfolded the paper inside, and began to read aloud, his voice steady but heavy with meaning. This donation, the mayor read, is dedicated to every child who was judged before being known, to every person who was laughed at instead of listened to. May the new year teach us to see people, not assumptions. The words echoed across the square. And then, silence. No cheering, no clapping, no movement at all. The crowd stood frozen, absorbing every sentence. The security guard swallowed hard, his jaw tightening. His eyes dropped to the ground as the weight of the moment settled in. Nearby, the people who had laughed earlier avoided looking at Caleb, suddenly finding the pavement, the sky, or their phones far more interesting. Caleb stood still, his hands resting calmly at his sides. Then he spoke. His voice was soft, but it carried. I grew up 3 blocks from here, Caleb said, gesturing lightly toward the edge of the square. Right past the old corner store that used to close early because people said it wasn't safe. Murmurs rippled quietly through the crowd. I walked these streets every day as a kid, he continued. I watched this city struggle. I watched schools lose funding. I watched neighbors give up. He paused, letting the words settle. And I was told the same thing over and over, Caleb said, that I wouldn't make it, that I didn't belong, that places like this, he motioned toward the brightly lit stage, weren't meant for people like me. Somewhere in the crowd, a woman wiped her eyes. Caleb took a slow breath. But tonight, he continued, I didn't come here to prove anyone wrong. The mayor looked at him, listening closely. I didn't come for recognition, Caleb said. I didn't come for applause. and I didn't come to remind anyone of their mistakes. He looked out over the crowd now, not with anger, but with honesty. I came to welcome a new year where respect comes first, he said, where we don't decide someone's worth in a few seconds, where we listen before we judge, where a person doesn't have to prove they belong. The silence broke. One clap, then another, slow at first, uncertain, then louder, stronger, until the entire square erupted in applause. Not the wild kind meant for celebrities, not the polite kind given out of obligation. This was different. This applause came from understanding, from guilt, from hope. People stood taller. Some nodded quietly. Others clapped with tears in their eyes. The security guard finally looked up. He stepped forward, removed his cap, and spoke softly. "I'm sorry," he said. Caleb met his eyes. He nodded once. "Let's do better next year," Caleb replied. Fireworks burst across the sky, painting the night in red, gold, and blue. But this time, people noticed something else. They noticed the man who didn't raise his voice, the man who didn't seek revenge, the man who turned humiliation into a lesson. As the cheers faded and the crowd slowly began to disperse, a father leaned down and whispered to his young son, "Remember what you saw tonight." Caleb stepped away from the stage and walked back into the crowd, quietly, calmly, the same way he arrived. But the city would never be the same. Because on the first moments of a brand new year, a man who was mocked minutes earlier reminded everyone of something powerful. Respect doesn't begin with status. It begins with how we treat each other. And that was the real New Year's gift. As fireworks painted the sky in waves of gold and crimson, the applause grew louder, stronger, refusing to fade. It wasn't the quick, polite kind of clapping that fills awkward moments. This was different. Some people clapped with shaking hands. Some wiped tears from their eyes. Some stood frozen, realizing they had witnessed something they would never forget. A few felt pride. Others felt something heavier. Shame. The security guard stepped forward slowly, the weight of the night written across his face. The confidence he carried earlier was gone. In its place was humility. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, his voice barely carrying past the front row. The words were simple, but they were real. Caleb looked at him for a long moment. No judgment, no triumph. Then he nodded. "Do better next year," Caleb replied. That was all. No speech, no lecture, no demand for forgiveness. Just dignity, the kind that doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. As the fireworks continued to explode overhead, the crowd slowly began to break apart. People spoke in hushed voices now, as if the night itself demanded respect. A mother knelt beside her young daughter and whispered, "Remember this moment." A man put his phone away without posting the video. Another person stared up at the sky, lost in thought. Caleb stepped away from the stage and walked into the thinning crowd. No escort, no spotlight. He moved the same way he arrived, calm, quiet, unnoticed by many. But the city noticed. It noticed in the conversations that followed, in the silence people carried home, in the questions parents answered that night. Because on a night meant to celebrate change, Caleb became the change. He reminded a city, and everyone watching, that respect doesn't come from titles, wealth, or appearances. It comes from how we treat people when no one is watching. And that is how one man, mocked just seconds before midnight, turned a New Year's celebration into a lesson the world needed to hear. Not with anger, not with revenge, but with grace.